This week's Parsha, the first time that Hashem speaks to Avram, he uses a phrase that appears only 3 times in the Torah, 2 of the 3 by Avraham. The first, this week's Parsha, by Avram's first test, and the second, the end of next week's Parsha, by the last test. And that term, of course, the Parsha is known by Lech, Lecha. The question is, what is the significance of this term? So Rashi here says, Lech Lecha, Leha'anatcha, Uletovatcha. For your own good. And the basis of Rashi's pshat is the next pasuk here, which speaks about and obviously there's a very important lesson here, which is that we believe that following God isn't just the right thing, it's also ultimately the best thing for us, and that's what God was teaching him. On another level, though, I think we can see in Lech Lecha a statement about Avram's identity in relation to others. The pasuk continues, Lech Lecha me'artzecha umi molartecha umi beit avicha. So often, many of us are ultimately the products of our environment, of our community, of our schools, of our shuls, of our families, of our homes, of our parents. Children grow up idealizing their parents, seeing it as a model. And the danger is that a person's identity, even if it is who they really are, isn't something they've come to appreciate for themselves. And very often what they believe isn't necessarily who they actually are, but just what they've been exposed to around them. In our world today, a world of freedom, people very often have their mindset based on the feed of their friends on Facebook or on Twitter, the friends we've chosen for ourselves, who very often will reaffirm certain opinions as opposed to us being exposed to the full breadth. And very often as opposed to us really understanding ourselves. And I think we saw this in the most recent election, where people who were reinforced by their friends and their cultural milieu were shocked that there were so many others who saw things differently. It's just an opinion that wasn't getting through. So Lech Lecha begins with this separation, this ability to understand for one's self. I think there's another level here as well. Literally, the word Lech Lecha means go to yourself. The moral here is that we ultimately go to our true selves when we're not dependent upon the expectations of others, on the one hand, as we just explained, but also when we follow God. Following God's path, El Haaretz Asher Areka, isn't just growing close to God, but ultimately the truest and only way to find ourselves. The lesson of Lech Lecha is that we find ourselves when our identity is not dependent on others on the one hand, but where it is dependent on God on the other hand. Avram's first test, after 75 years of his life, is the willingness to give up on his comfort zone, his past, what he's already familiar with. His final test, when he was 100, for the next 75 years of his life, is whether he's willing to give up on his future. Not the past, but the future, the new world, the new familiarity, the new comfort zone he's built for himself. We cherish relationships of Mesorah, of past and future, but we're only truly part of it when we've arrived to these understandings for ourselves. Maybe not on our own, but for ourselves. And when that identity is rooted in following God El Makom Asher Areka and not alternatives that the world presents for us. Let's all heed this call of Lech Lecha, find our true selves by following God's call. Shabbat Shalom.